Picture the Pacific in the middle of the night. No coastline, no runway lights, just black water in every direction. And one small Coast Guard ship below. Now look up. A passenger airliner is circling that ship. It can reach California, it can return to Hawaii. One engine is dead, another is dying, and a runway propeller is dragging at the airplane like a giant brake. Captain Richard Ogg already knows where this flight will end. In the ocean. But he keeps circling, burning the fuels that's keeping them in the sky, because he's waiting for the one thing his crew cannot create. Sunrise. It's October 15th, 1956. Pan American Flight 6 leaves Honolulu for San Francisco, the last leg of a journey around the world. The airplane is a Boeing 377 Stratocruiser. 2 passenger decks, a long downstairs, 31 people aboard, 24 passengers, 3 of them infants, and 7 crews. The flight should take less than 9 hours. They have fuel for more than 12. Everything feels routine. Then, just after 1 in the morning, as they level at 21,000 feet, the propeller on the far left engine begins turning much too fast. The pilots try to control it, but nothing. They try to feather the blades, turning them edge-on to the wind so the dead propeller stops fighting the airplane, but still nothing. Finally, Ogg cuts the engine's oil supply, hoping it will seize the force the propeller to stop. For a moment, the revolutions fall. Then comes a heavy thud. The engine is dead. But the propeller starts spinning again, and now the wind is driving it. A dead engine sounds bad enough, but this is worse. Normally, its propeller can be feathered so the blades cut clearly through the air. You lose power, but the airplane can keep going. Flight 6 can't do that. The passing air keeps those huge blades spinning, almost like a turbine running backward. Except it isn't creating power, it's stealing it. Imagine holding a spinning disc the size of a room into a 200-mile-an-hour wind. That's what the surviving engines are dragging through the sky. And the faster they fly, the harder it pulls. So the crew has to slow to around 140 knots, below the airplane's most efficient speed on 2 engines. Tests later showed the propeller may have produced more than 2,000 pounds of drag. Over 1,000 horsepower was being spent simply fighting it. And across the airplane, the engine on the far right is beginning to lose power too. The engine on the far right can now deliver only part of its normal power. So the crew does the calculation everyone in that cockpit is hoping will somehow come out differently. With the runway propeller and the wing engine, their practical range is about 750 miles. Honolulu is more than 1,000 miles behind them. San Francisco is more than 1,000 miles ahead. Draw a circle around the airplane and there is no land inside it. No airport, no island, just ocean. But there is a ship. The Coast Guard cutter Pontchartrain is stationed at a lonely patrol point called Ocean Station November. At 1:22 a.m., Flight 6 warns the cutter that it may have to ditch. Radar finds the airplane 38 miles away. 15 minutes later, it's overhead. The cutter fires flares and places electric lights on the water, trying to build a runway where none exists. Ogg could come down now. Instead, he turns the airplane and begins another circle. Waiting looks reckless. Every circle burns fuel. Every minute gives another engine time to fail. But Ogg understands something. The fuel isn't only keeping them airborne, it's also weight. And when a 66-ton airplane meets the ocean, every pound matters. So they circle. They grow lighter. They make practice approaches beside the cutter, learning how this damaged airplane behaves at low speed. The night is buying them 3 things: daylight, less weight, and practice. Then, at around 2:55, the weak engine backfires. Its last useful power disappears. That propeller feathers normally, one small mercy, but Flight 6 is now flying on only the two engines nearest the fuselage, while the runaway propeller still spins on the far left wing. The airplane settles into a long pattern above the cutter. For the next 3 hours, nobody is waiting to learn if they'll land in the Pacific. They're preparing for the moment when they do. Inside the cabin, fear has work to do. The crew gives it a job. Glasses come off, shoes and sharp objects are removed, life jackets are tightened, and adults' jackets are adapted for the children. Loose equipment is carried away. Ogg believes the tail may break on impact, so the passengers are moved forward. Some are assigned to open exits, others will launch the rafts. Parents are shown how to protect their children. And then they wait. For part of the night, passengers are allowed to move around. Some even smoke. It's a strangely ordinary detail. People passing time in a comfortable cabin while the crew prepares to abandon it forever. Below them, the Pontchartrain is getting ready too. The cutter launches rescue boats and lays a streak of foam across the water, a pale line for Ogg to follow into the sea. At 5:40 a.m., he calls the ship. Flight 6 is preparing to come down. The cutter asks for a 10 minutes warning. Its boats must be in the water before the airplane is. Dawn finally reaches the Pacific. For the first time, Ogg can see the waves, the cutter, and the foam path across the water. He brings the Stratocruiser down to 900 feet and turns onto the final pattern. 1 minute before impact, the warning passes through the cabin. Brace! At 6:15 a.m., gear up, full flaps, moving at about 19 knots, Flight 6 touches the Pacific. The first contact is almost gentle, then the airplane strikes again. The nose plunges partly on the water, the Stratocruiser rises back up, then stops with terrifying speed. Just as Ogg feared, the fuselage breaks behind the main cabin door. Seats tear loose, people hit the floor, two children are pulled from their mother's arms. And yet, everyone is alive. No major injuries, 5 people are hurt, but only slightly. The exits open, rafts go out through the wing hatches and the cabin door. One catches on the broken tail, forcing passengers across the wing. The Coast Guard boats are already moving. By 6:32, everyone is off the airplane. 3 minutes later, the Stratocruiser slips beneath the surface. After carrying them around the world, it disappears into water too deep to give it back. And now the investigators have a problem. The wreckage is gone. There is no engine to dismantle, no broken part on a table pointing to the answer. They have only the crew's memories, the instruments, maintenance records, and what engineers know about the machinery. The Civil Aeronautics Board concludes there were 2 separate failures. The weak engine on the right most likely lost the drive to its supercharger impeller and could no longer produce useful power. The runaway propeller is harder to explain. Oil pressure controlled both its speed and the movement of its blades into the feathered position. Investigators believe one failure affected this shared system. That would explain the overspeed and why the propeller refused to feather. But they could not find the exact cause. Later, Pan Am suffered 2 more runaway propellers that could not be feathered. Those were traced to an oil transfer bearing. The bearing was redesigned, and the change became mandatory in 1957. And it's tempting to say that must be what happened here. Maybe it was, but the evidence can't prove it. Sometimes an investigation ends with a broken part and a clear answer. This one ends with an empty place on the ocean floor and the limits of what can honestly be known. The survival of Flight 6 wasn't one heroic moment. It was dozens of small decisions all pulling in the same direction. The navigator found one small ship in an enormous ocean. The Pontchartrain launched its boats and turned open water into something that almost looked like a runway. The cabin crew turned frightened passengers into an evacuation team. And the pilots resisted the most human urge of all, the urge to end the danger quickly. They waited. They traded uncertainty for daylight, fuel for a lighter airplane, and time for one practice approach after another. Sunrise didn't save Flight 6 by itself. The waiting did. Richard Ogg couldn't remove the danger, so he took what he still had: time, fuel, and training, and one small ship below, and turned it into a chance. At 6:35 that morning, the airplane was gone. But all 31 people were alive. Sometimes, survival isn't about escaping the impossible. Sometimes, it's about refusing to rush it. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, give it a like, and I will see you in the next one.